stick with the Vancouver story. Joining us now for some street-level reaction is Steve Saretsky. He's a realtor and author of the Steve Saretsky blog at .com. Steve, good to see you again.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Greg.
So what should we make of these numbers? It's interesting as we go through them. We know that we've seen the lowest total sales for the month of March since 1986. It's quite a long time ago. And it seems that the local real estate board not only taking aim at the rules and regulations and the policies that have been put in place in recent years, but sort of warning that it's only going to make things worse in the longer term. How do you read all that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, 33-year low in home sales is, I think the numbers speak for itself. When I look at it, I think the market was already beginning to turn over before any of these policies were introduced. You could see volumes topping out in 2016, really just exhaustion for the most part, but no doubt that the bout of policies that we've had over the last couple of years have certainly exacerbated this downturn. And as much as I felt it was coming, I think even most people would say they're surprised to see a 33-year low in home sales, particularly given Vancouver's added about 1 million people in that time frame. So yeah, pretty weak.
Is that where it becomes a very strange tension? People are still moving to the city, but home sales have plunged. Is there something there in the math that you see as a realtor that's not making a lot of sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's simply just a very emotional process. Most home sellers are very much tied emotionally to their home prices. Everybody always thinks their house is worth more than it realistically is. And so you basically have this divide right now with what buyers are realistically willing to pay. They see the writing on the wall. They see that the market is soft. They're nervous about the housing market, so they're trying to come in on the on the lower side of things. And then you have sellers basically still asking these sky-high prices. So you have this large divide, and that's really why you have basically a 33-year low in home sales. There's a huge disconnect between what buyers are willing to pay.
Given those dynamics of what you've seen in the market in the past couple of years, would you expect then for prices to further decline? We know that across all the asset types of homes, the single-family homes, the condos, the semis, they have pulled back. But if there's still this disconnect, do we have a way to go to the downside?
Yeah, I mean, I think all we can realistically do is try to look back into history and look at other real estate markets and try to see how they've reacted. Obviously, no each one is identical, but they certainly do rhyme. And what you generally see is volumes tend to fall and ultimately bottom out before prices really start to accelerate lower. So I think anytime you have a 33-year low in home sales, that's going to affect prices. And I think it's just a matter of time until we start to notice, more downside action. I think that's to be likely in the cards unless policymakers can somehow reverse it and add in some stimulative policies to try to give it some juice.
Yeah, right now, obviously, a lot of people were looking toward the federal budget, which came down several weeks ago as to what they would do and all the hints. And then we got the first-time home buyer incentive, and all the details aren't out, but I know a lot of people in the industry who are trying to grapple with the math have sort of settled on this number. Well, it seems you're talking about a home maybe around $480,000, $500,000 with a household income of no more than $120,000. For a market like Vancouver, it doesn't sound like that incentive would go very far.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're looking at it, the max income you can have is $120,000. That puts you at a max purchase price of just under $500,000. I mean, realistically in Vancouver, that there's not a whole lot you're going to find for under $500,000, at least in today's market. So I can't really see that program being very effective, at least in Vancouver. But and not to mention that it looks like you're going to be giving up a chunk of your equity just to partner up with the government there. So I'm not really sure that the program makes a whole lot of sense, but in my opinion, if you look at the policymakers, their whole motivation incentive has been to curb household debt and to curb the growth in home prices. So I almost think that this program was brought in by design to not be overly stimulative.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because if the whole point of all the policies, the rules, the regulations, the taxes that we've seen ushered in over the past several years were to cool the market and stop that frenzied ramp up to the upside, I guess they've succeeded. Would they be all that worried about these kind of numbers? Obviously, the industry doesn't like to see numbers like this, but would policymakers look at this and say, oh, okay, this is pretty much where we want to be?
I mean, that seems to be the case. I've talked with us numerous times. You had the BC government, recently elected that came out, about 6 months ago saying that their main objective was to basically lower home prices. And that's really an unprecedented stance from a government to take. But if you ask the voters and you look at the general public, that seems to be outside of the real estate industry. That seems to be actually well received and actually politically popular. So I think we live in fascinating times.
Investor capital, foreign capital, over the past several years, everyone's trying to grapple with that question. How much of an influence has it been? As you look back over the past several years in Vancouver, what did you see in terms of investor capital, hot, fast money, foreign cash coming in, and was that what was pushing up the market?
Yeah, we no doubt had a huge boost from Chinese capital flight in 2015, 2016. And I think with those rising home prices, it brought in a lot of local speculation as well. People, getting into the flipping business. I saw a lot of that. People buying pre-sales, flipping those, and what we've seen is not only the Chinese capital flows have pulled back, but because home prices are no longer growing, that's pulled a lot of that speculative bid out of the market. Where I have personally a lot of investor clients that are nervous about entering the market. If you're trying to flip a home or build a single-family house on spec, I think it's almost suicide. So I think it's pulled a lot of that activity out of the market as well.
All right, Steve, always great to get your insight. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
That was Steve Saretsky, realtor and author of SteveSaretsky.com.